In this screencast, I want to talk briefly about the search system of ArchivesSpace. So ArchivesSpace Search has three pieces playing their parts. We have Solr running as a standalone web application which listens on a port. We have the ArchivesSpace backend, which we've seen in previous screencasts, which is taking record updates and storing them in a database. And then we have this indexer process, which is sitting between the two. And the indexer's job is to keep track of updates, produce Solr documents from them, and then send those documents to Solr to be indexed. So the indexer is started when ArchivesSpace first starts up, and there are actually two indexing activities taking place at any given moment. There's a periodic indexer which will poll the backend every 30 seconds by default, and it asks for any records that have been changed since it last asked. The backend then sends back any changed records, and the periodic indexer turns them into Solr documents and sends them off to Solr for indexing. We also have a real-time indexer which is notified by the backend as soon as an update occurs. This works by using long polling. The indexer hits an endpoint on the backend that will block until something needs indexing. These two modes, periodic and real-time, serve different purposes. The periodic indexer makes sure that nothing ever gets missed. It keeps track of the time it last successfully queried the backend and always resumes from that point. If the backend crashes or is shut down, or if the indexer isn't running, the periodic indexer will pick up where it left off the next time it starts. The real-time indexer pushes user-visible changes through as quickly as possible. So if you create a new record, it should be added to the index very quickly, within a second or two. And likewise, if you update an existing record, you should see those updates appear quite quickly. Most records will be indexed by the real-time indexer first, and then the periodic indexer up to half a minute later. One exception to this is batch operations like imports and transfers. These bypass the real-time indexer completely, so you won't see these sort of changes land in the index until the periodic indexer has run, which on average will be 15 seconds, but maybe up to 30 seconds. And that's just a trade-off. We can't set everything to be high priority and expect performance to remain constant. I'm just going to do a very quick walk through the code here. So you'll find the indexer sitting under the indexer subdirectory of the project. You can see we've structured it as a web app even though the indexer doesn't actually have a public interface. This is just to make it possible to deploy under a standard servlet container like Tomcat without too much trouble. The most interesting bit of the indexer is probably the indexer common file, which is under the lib directory here. You can see we have three files: indexer common, periodic indexer, and real-time indexer. And so obviously periodic indexer and real-time indexer are the different modes that the indexer runs in, but they are 90% identical, and so indexer common contains the common definitions for the different indexer types. And this file is mainly concerned with knowing which different types of records to index, and then for defining special rules for indexing certain records. So for example, I can just scroll down here and you can see we have things like helpers for adding subjects to a record, and if we get further down here you'll see there are some record specific types. So we say if the document is of type subject, then we're going to set a few different fields in the Solr document. Likewise, if it's a repository, then we'll set these things up. And there are some common fields for all documents defined here as well, where we say there's always a title, so we're going to index that, and things like that.